let's go over what we came up with in the last class. What was our conclusion? How did we end? So we spoke a lot about the question. We went really into the difference between the way the patriarchs fulfilled the Torah, and the fact that we're making a big deal about Hashem giving us the Torah, even though we had it already. So we're trying to understand what is this unique idea of Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, if we really had the Torah already. So we had some very good answers and good points, and they're all correct. It was a formal inauguration, so to speak, of being obligated. We became a nation. It was an important gathering of the Jewish people. So we became obligated. Before it, we were fulfilling the mitzvahs out of without being obligated. So it's a higher level. And these were all very good insights. But we came up with a major, they all are missing to some extent. They're missing a major point, and that is that at the giving of the Torah, what changed, what Hashem chose at that point was that it's not just that he's going to allow us to connect to him. It's not just Hashem will allow us to connect to his level of spirituality when we fulfill the mitzvahs, but that we can connect to his essence, that he's putting his essence in the Torah, and he's putting his essence in the mitzvahs. Anoichi stands for these words that I put my soul into the Torah. And idea is a very powerful idea. It's really a radical change from the way the mitzvahs were performed before. And Hashem made this change, meaning until Hashem made this change, we could have connected to Hashem, but in a much lower level. We connect to a lower level of godliness. But here Hashem's putting his essence into it, meaning that he wants, this is exactly what he's interested in it's not just a means for something else. He wants his essence. He in his essence, this is what it's all about. This is what Hashem is all about, is the Torah being given to the Jewish people. So it's almost the way I see it is like you could have hobbies, and you could be, in certain things that you might enjoy, but then you have what do you really stand for? Who are you? What is your essence? And here Hashem is telling us, and Hashem is giving us the Torah and mitzvahs, and he's putting himself into it, and almost like this is what it's all about. This is everything. This is the entire thing. There's nothing greater. I'm putting myself, I'm investing everything into this. And this is what my essence is. And that's where we got up to. Now, the thing is that that's only part of that's really just part of it. There's really more to this. And what I mean to say is we have to understand what did the patriarchs accomplish? When the patriarchs did some of the mitzvahs, or we know they fulfilled all the mitzvahs, but to what extent did they do the mitzvahs? So let's, for example, pick tefillin. Do we think that the patriarchs had a black box to put on as tefillin? A black box with handwritten writing with the Torah portions where it says that I took you out of Egypt. Was that inside the tefillin that the patriarchs, it says the patriarchs kept the Torah. Even Erev Tavshilin, it says, or Erev Tchumen, all right? It mentions even the laws of the rabbinic laws. So the the question is, so what was in their tefillin? So it's pretty obvious that they didn't have tefillin that says, I am Hashem who took you out of Egypt. It didn't say that in their tefillin. In fact, in Kabbalistic writings, it mentions that when Jacob did that trick with the, he did an interesting thing with peeling off bark from these branches. So it says that symbolized tefillin. That's what it says in Kabbalistic writings and Zohar. It says that was the tefillin, which basically means that he reached the level of the spiritual level of tefillin. He was able to connect with. That's what it says. Listen, I'm not making this up. This is what it says. He was able to connect it. So he didn't do the exact action that we did, but he connected with the concept of tefillin in the spiritual realm. That's what he accomplished. And he did something physical, but somehow that physical act had some effect to reach the level of tefillin that we do. So they fulfilled the mitzvahs. They did they reached these levels of mitzvahs. But there is a little problem here. And the problem is that...
Rabbi?
Yes.
I was thinking, Jacob, didn't he put pasim on the wood, on the branches?
No, it says he peeled it off, so there was white.
He peeled off pasim.
No, pasim is kotonet pasim. That's a garment that he
that's
gave.
Something else. No.
That he gave Yosef.
I thought for when he was by Lavan, he peeled off pasim.
Yeah, machsof halavan asher al hamaklot. It says, right? Machsof halavan. Right, that he peeled off the bark and he made it like made certain streaks of white, which symbolized tefillin.
Yeah.
Because
so I think maybe that's what the Retzuah of the film is.
It looks like the Retzuas of the tefillin. That's correct. But
that's what I'm saying.
But this is no little toy. He wasn't just playing toys and, I'm doing tefillin because I'm wrapping a string around my arm.
Later, when they made the film, when they made the Retzuah, maybe they used his system.
His system. No.
Because it was successful, what he did.
His system was successful at getting animals to produce the animals that he wanted it to produce. I don't know if it brought down the blessings that we want all different types of blessings. We're not just looking to produce these type of animals.
But if it's magical, it'll produce for us too.
It's worth it. So it seems to work the opposite way. He was trying to reach the level where we do. You know what I mean? Not that we're trying to get miracles, so we're gonna follow his somehow streets. But and the main thing of the tefillin really is the box. The straps is less of is not really the main part. It's tying a certain thing on your arm, not just making a tie on your arm. But obviously he reached the level that we are reaching with our tefillin. Yes, David.
Susan had a question.
Oh, okay, Susan.
It's just that I wanted to just make a mention of something that you were making a very big deal about why they were in the desert last week. And I read something that the desert is silent. There's no noise in the desert. And the Jewish people needed to listen carefully. And without any noise around or anything going on, it's much easier to listen. And you know what I'm saying? And this is not an original idea. I stole this from Rabbi Sachs. Okay. And he makes a very good point that faith is the ability to hear the music beneath the noise.
Okay. It's not really connected to what we're talking about now, but thank you for mentioning
that. It's just,
Susan.
I like to look up other things when you mention it, especially you were so adamant about why they were in the desert, that how important that was. And you were right. That was very important. Why they had to go to the desert to get the Sinai, to get the Torah. You made a very big point about that.
But you sure not Rabbi Citron? Maybe Rabbi Citron was talking about that.
You.
Okay. So maybe okay. Thank you for sharing it. But next time, try to share it maybe at the end of class. because it's not really connected to what we're talking about. So in any event, getting back to what we're talking about, the patriarchs did the mitzvahs. Now, what's interesting is that Abraham, his connection, his way of serving Hashem was very different than Yitzchok's. And Yitzchok's way of serving Hashem was different than Yaakov. And that's why we don't really find that they did things similarly. Abraham was busy doing acts of kindness, opening his tent to on all sides. He had entrances for guests, and he was giving abundance of kindness to all the people who were passing through. Isaac was very busy digging wells, and we know these were connected to their spiritual mitzvahs, but yet we see that they seem to have major differences in the way they're serving Hashem. Jacob, as well, is a different type of. He connects to Hashem on another level. Abraham is called chesed, kindness. Yitzchok is called discipline, gvura, and he was connecting to Hashem. Digging wells is symbolic of the way he served Hashem, elevating himself. Abraham was kindness. It was like spreading, helping others, distributing the godliness to others, and Jacob as well had a certain way of serving Hashem called tiferes, which is the concept of beauty, and he was also called the midah of emes, truth, and the bottom line is that they seem to serve Hashem in different paths, and we seem to have pretty much one path of serving Hashem. We follow the mitzvahs. We don't find these major differences in people. In other words, you put tefillin on, I put tefillin on. You keep Shabbos, I keep Shabbos. We seem to be following a very similar type of mitzvahs activities, while the patriarchs, we find they did things very different. So this leads us
I'm not sure if he froze or not. Rabbi Smith, are you frozen?
Looks like he's disconnected.
Yeah, he is frozen. He is.
Cold in the desert.
I was going to say that there's a mitzvah of Gimil Chasadim, which means acts of loving kindness, and there's different ways that people do it. Some people invite guests for Shabbos. Some people get tzedakah. Oh, there you are. You're mute, Rabbi Smith. You're mute.
not only I was muted, somehow my computer crashed for a second. Okay, so can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so the question is, so the point is that the patriarchs had this very different way of serving Hashem because their way of serving Hashem was based on the spiritual. In other words, last week I mentioned that there's a philosophical question about Judaism, and that is, what's more important? Is it the emotions, the feeling in Judaism, or is it the actions? Is the actions, is that a means of showing your emotions? Is it a means of expression that you're supposed to do actions of kindness, let's say? Mitzvah of chesed, tzedakah, gemilas chasadim, doing acts of kindness, charity. Is that mitzvah, is when you do that act, is the most important part of it the feeling that you have, that you're so happy to give someone, to help someone, to share? Or is it more the action that's the mitzvah? Which one really carries the priority, the main focus?
Rabbi,
Yes, Moshe.
Can I just want to say that with the patriarchs, it's known that the actions were more important than words. That was how Abraham Avinu and Sarah communicated with each other, that the actions that they carried out were more important than the words that they said.
Well, I'm not comparing it to words. I'm comparing it to emotions. That's
But
the
emotions
question.
are,
You're making
emotions
your
are-
own speech.
No,
We're trying to compare the actions to emotions and feelings. So in general about words, we always say that Emar Ma'at va'aseh harbin, right? In Pirkei Avos, ethics of our fathers. Say a little and do a lot. So that's not really not what we're dealing with. We're talking about actions versus emotions. So there seems to be proofs that the patriarchs, their mitzvahs were more connected to the spiritual element in the mitzvah, the feeling, the emotion, the intent. Our mitzvahs are different. Our mitzvahs, the main thing is the action. So there seems to be this major change. Again, we're comparing the before the giving of the Torah and after the giving of the Torah. And the reason why the patriarchs were different is based on this idea that their mitzvahs were connected to the spiritual. And one of the ways we see that is, why were their actions so extremely different, so different ends of the spectrum? You know, Avraham was serving Hashem this way, Yitzchok serving Hashem that way. It seems that the way they served Hashem was really a whole different style than our way of doing mitzvahs. And the basis for it is because they were serving Hashem with their emotions, with their feelings, and that was what was important. And another proof to this, besides the way we see their way of serving Hashem, is an interesting. It's an interesting part of story in the Torah where we have Abraham feeding those 3 Arabs that came to his house, that came to his tent. And it turns out, if you understand the story there based on the Talmudic interpretation, Abraham was in the middle of speaking to Hashem, and he saw these 3 people coming and towards his tent. He was on the 3rd day of his circumcision, and he went and he told Hashem, let me go to invite these guests. And he runs to invite the guests. And the Talmud says that we learn from here that inviting guests is greater than receiving the divine presence. Because Abraham was in the middle of speaking to Hashem, receiving the divine presence, and he told Hashem, wait, let me go and get the guests. So the Talmud learns this idea from there, that receiving guests is greater than the divine presence. Now, the only problem is that who were these 3 guests? It turns out that they were not humans. They were angels. They didn't even eat his food. They pretended maybe. They put it in their pocket, right? They were not human. So what exactly was Avraham doing? He was not inviting guests. This was not a mitzvah of hachnasas orchim, of inviting guests, because there were no guests. These were angels. They weren't human. There's no mitzvah of inviting angels. It was humans are hungry. Humans, there's a mitzvah called hachnasas orchim. So there's the act that Avraham did. After you know the story, it turns out that it was like a mistake. Now, could we really say that it was a mistake? Does it make sense Hashem would cause Abraham to make a mistake? He told Hashem to wait because he sees guests, and we see from there that really it's more important to invite guests than speak to Hashem and have the divine presence. But really these are not guests. So Hashem really ended up, we're going to say that Hashem caused Abraham to be like tricked, and he really should not have told Hashem to wait. Why did Hashem cause Abraham to do this? So the easiest way of answering this question is to explain, as we've been explaining, that before the Torah was given, the mitzvahs were more about the spiritual and the feelings. The action was only a means to express how you really feel. You brought it out with your actions. So they were human, they weren't human, doesn't matter. Abraham showed to the world that he wants to invite guests. And he brought them the tongue, and he brought them delicious food. He showed, he expressed his emotions. He fulfilled the mitzvah, it turns out. If we did that today, we would not be doing a mitzvah. Because if you invite a doll to your table and you pour milk down the doll's throat, you're not doing a mitzvah of inviting guests. If it's not a human, it's not a mitzvah. But Abraham fulfilled a mitzvah, because when Abraham was doing this act, it was before the Torah was given. And before the Torah was given, the emotions played a major role. And that was the way we connected to Hashem. What do I mean? What I mean is that I've explained, and what we concluded last week was that the concept of the giving of the Torah was this radical change where Hashem put himself into the Torah. And he wants us to connect with himself, with his essence. Before that, the way it worked was, before the giving of the Torah, the patriarchs connected to Hashem. But how did they connect to Hashem? They connected to Hashem on a level that's the highest level of humans. What's the highest level that they could reach? Serving Hashem with their emotions, with their, with their highest, their feelings. They were able to reach they're serving. Their actions is something lower. Their emotions, their feelings, that was actually something higher that they were able to serve Hashem with. So they connected to Hashem, not Hashem's essence, but they connected to Hashem. Hashem lowered himself wanting these mitzvahs. They connected to him on their highest level. It's like a student, when he's by his teacher, he's trying to act his best. He's trying to listen, be a receptacle. When he's on his own, he is who he is. But when he's a student in front of his teacher, he's giving his teacher his best. He's trying to concentrate as best as he could. He's giving the way the patriarchs served Hashem was they were serving Hashem in a way that they gave their highest level, their spiritual level, to Hashem. They served Hashem with their spirituality. So it wasn't their actions that really was so important. Their actions were only a means to express their feelings. But it was their feelings and their emotions and their spiritual side that was really the most important thing. And the final proof to this idea as well, that after the giving of the Torah, the action is more important, is from the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law. Throughout the Code of Jewish Law, you have technical details, the entire Code of Jewish Law. How much of it talks about our intent, our concentration, what we're supposed to have in mind? Very minimal. It's a tiny, tiny amount talks about kavanah, our intent. And very little, and almost nothing talks about the Kabbalistic intent. There's deeper Kabbalistic ideas. Code of Jewish Law tells us all the details of the technical. So we see that the technical laws carry a very important element versus the spiritual side of things. It really, this boils down to the famous saying that you probably hear all the time. People say, I'm a Jew in my heart, a Jew at heart. So what we're saying here is that would have been good before the Torah was given. As long as you express it and make people know it, as long as you reveal it, that would have been good before the Torah was given. Now, after the Torah was given, it's not enough to be a Jew, a good Jew at heart. Now, so what comes out is that before the Torah was given, the emotions, the spiritual side was the way we connected to Hashem, because our highest level connected to Hashem's lowering himself to the human abilities. And Hashem said, I want you, he lowered himself, so to speak, showed interest in our action, in our service to him, I should say. And that really meant our spiritual side. After the giving of the Torah, it's all about our physical. Now, what does this mean? So we have the essence of Hashem that's connecting now to our physical actions. That's what we've sort of come up with now. That after the giving of the Torah, it's Hashem's essence that wants our physical. This wasn't the way it was before the giving of the Torah, but after the giving of the Torah, so it's the physical that's important for us, and from Hashem's side, it's the essence of Hashem connecting to our physical actions. Now, there is one more point that has to be made, and that is that our actions, our physical, our actions. Just 1 second here. Our actions. How do they connect to? How do our actions?
I think you have to.
What? Can you hear me?
But I'm hearing a lot of back.
You hear background noise? Oh,
yeah.
Let me mute everyone. I'm sorry. So, so what we said so far was Hashem's essence connects to our physical actions after the giving of the Torah. An additional point that has to be mentioned is that our physical actions actually have an effect, a long-term effect on everything any mitzvah that we do. So for example, if you put tefillin on, those tefillin become holy. You can't let them fall on the floor. You can't throw them in the garbage. You can't, everything has it, the holiness stays. Before the giving of the Torah, the holiness, the spirituality, the kedusha did not impact the physical in a long-lasting way that it would make things holy. And again, it's based on this idea that before the giving of the Torah, the mitzvahs, what was most important was the spiritual side, the emotions, the feeling. The action was just a means to get to the emotions. But the emotions was the main thing. The feeling, the spiritual. After the giving of the Torah, the physical became the main thing. And because the physical became the main thing, that's why the physical actually will carry with it the holiness of the mitzvah that you perform. So these items become imbued with holiness from your mitzvahs. Not only the action, not only the physical things, the air that you're breathing, the environment around you, the street that you're walking on. These all become, when you're studying Torah and you're thinking Torah and doing mitzvahs, you're actually elevating everything that you come in contact with. And I'm going to have to conclude here. We'll continue tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem, and I'll hand over the mic to